News on a former Commander captain? Also, did the Commanders have any of their defensive ends rank in the ESPN top 10 list? And we dive into three to watch on the offensive line, all on this edition of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Let's roll.
Are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, and welcome in, everybody. Good to have you with us right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast. I am Chris Russell. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. We are your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Locked On Commanders is free and available on all platforms, including now on YouTube and the WUSA 9 Plus app. WUSA 9, your CBS affiliate in Washington, D.C., has a new stream app that is a game changer for local news and sports in the DMV. Download the WUSA 9 Plus app now from your Roku or Amazon Fire TV stick. Again, I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst show, which can be found on the Team 980 Monday through Friday from 9 to noon, and that's Eastern time, of course, or anytime on Rewind and or on download on the Audacy app. My partner, David Harrison, is off tonight. He's busy covering the Washington Commanders for SI.com's Fan Nation. You can find us on Twitter at DHarrison82, WrestleMania621 for me, and at LO Commanders, as we thank you for making us your first view and your first listen of the day. Great to have you with us, and we start with obviously some tough news is the best way I could put it, and that is former Commanders special teams captain Deshazor Everett. And again, he is former. The team did release him. Pleaded guilty on Tuesday in Loudoun County, Virginia, to a reduced charge of misdemeanor reckless driving following his involvement in a fatal single-car accident that cost the life of his longtime girlfriend, Olivia Peters, who was visiting Washington and Virginia from Las Vegas on December 23rd of last year. That, according to court records, as written up by multiple different outlets. Everett was facing a charge of felony involuntary manslaughter. Again, he entered the guilty plea when the prosecution offered that to reduce the initial charge. Deshazor Everett played from 2015 through 2021. Again, a former Commanders special teams captain and a guy I didn't know very well, to be honest with you. I was cycling in and out of the beat. I wasn't always in the locker room, so others know him way better than I do. But everything I knew, good guy, obviously a hard worker, not a great safety, but a very core key member of the special teams, 30 years old now. And again, unfortunately, his girlfriend, Olivia Peters, age 29, passed away in this accident. He was allegedly driving more than twice the posted 45-mile-per-hour speed limit. Car went off the road on a windy. I go past this accident scene sometimes. It is a tough stretch in Loudoun County. You should not be driving anywhere close to as fast as Deshazor Everett just pled guilty to driving. I hope he can recover from this. I hope he can resume his life in some sort of normal way. Unfortunately, Olivia Peters won't. And allegedly, there were other Commanders players behind the group. I don't know exactly what happened here. I don't know if we'll ever know. But one thing I will say is, yes, Washington had to make a choice to cut ties with Deshazor Everett. I mean, I guess they could have gone through the process and seen it out, and maybe he would face, a suspension on the personal conduct policy. I'm not sure how that's going to go. I would have to imagine any team that signs him is going to have to deal with something like that. So maybe the Commanders just didn't want that on their head. I understand why they cut corners with him, but this is just something I'll just say. We say often at the end of every show, don't you dare drive like a maniac. Well, this is kind of what I mean. Last year, the NFL faced a couple of incidents like this that lives were lost Deshazor Everett and again Olivia Peters, and ironically both involving residents of Las Vegas. That's where Olivia Peters, Deshazor Everett's girlfriend, was from. Also, Tina Turner, who perished in a brutal, fatal car accident when Henry Ruggs III was allegedly drunk and driving at alleged speeds of over 150 miles per hour in Las Vegas and killed her and her dog. I could just say this. 2 careers lost, 2 lives lost, and actually 3 lives lost when you factor in the loss of the dog. Please, I don't mean to be a jerk here. If the speed limit's 45, can we go 55 and not 90 or 80 or 85? Maybe I'm an old man. I fear for my life every single day driving to Washington, D.C., having to go and do a radio show in the nation's capital from Virginia, about a 35-mile each-way trip. Every day of my life, every moment, I'm half paranoid that I'm going to be taken out by some reckless maniac who's driving way over the speed limit. I see it every day, guys. I see it every day. And most of you, I'm sure, see it regularly, if not every day. And most of you probably feel the same. Maybe you're not willing to admit it, but I am. I'm scared to death. Please stop. Please stop driving recklessly. Please stop driving like a maniac. I know many of you won't, but if you do, if you hear this message, it costs lives and it costs careers. I don't know if Deshazor Everett's ever going to play in the NFL again. I have no idea. He's probably not going to play with the Commanders again. I can't imagine that they pick him back up after this. I can't rule it out. But the point being is it cost him his career for at least right now and maybe forever. And it cost lives. And it cost lives in Las Vegas and 2 Las Vegas residents. One passing away in Virginia and one in Las Vegas. So please keep that in mind. All right. I'm done sermonizing, if you will. But I wanted to get that out with the news on Deshazor Everett. Now, we move on to football, right? Take a deep breath. We try and lift the spirits, if you will, a little bit. And here's how we're going to do that. David's been writing this series on SI.com's Fan Nation, 3 players to watch at a certain position group, right? We've covered the last couple of episodes, the first couple of episodes this week, the tight end and the wide receivers. And now today we're going to take a look at what David wrote about the offensive line and how I'm going to answer it as well. Again, you can check out the full post, SI.com/NFL/Commanders, and you can search for it. And I'm going to post it up in terms of the show descriptions and in terms of our Twitter feed at LO Commanders, as well. So David's 3 to watch are Trey Turner, the new right guard, Chase Roulier, the existing but injured center, and Chris Paul, the new 7th-round pick rookie out of Tulsa. I think those are 3 reasonable choices, 3 solid choices, no doubt about it. Here's how I'll answer that, just those 3. Trey Turner, I have less questions, at least in my mind, about the 29-year-old former 5-time Pro Bowler than I do about Andrew Norwell. I'm not saying Trey Turner's way better than Andrew Norwell, but I do think he's slightly better, and I just seem to have more questions in my mind about Norwell than Trey Turner, which is going to lead to, obviously, where we go out of there. I don't know if Chris Paul is going to make the roster. He seems like a nice kid. If he does make the team, that would be great. Now, he's probably going to have to push off somebody that is a little bit more certainly established. He's versatile. I think he can play both guard positions. I think he may be able to play right tackle. Not sure about left tackle. I know he did some of that at Tulsa, all of that. Chase Roulier, we know. The only question about him is whether the injury somehow affects him moving forward and whether he'll be truly ready for week 1. I don't think you'll see him play in the preseason, but I do think the injury happened early enough that he'll play in week 1 of the NFL season against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, my 3 to watch as we move this forward, heading into training camp, again, David's Trey Turner, Chase Roulier, Chris Paul. My 3 to watch are Sam Cosmi, Andrew Norwell, who we just talked about, and Saahdiq Charles. Now, let me spend a little time on Cosmi. I don't question his run blocking. I think he's really good in there. I do have questions, and I think everybody does legitimately, about his pass blocking. We saw that at times last year, and I think that was a knock against him coming out of Texas. We don't question the athlete. We question his durability. Can he stay on the field? He only played 9 games last year. That's a big, 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 big question. It has to be. There's no doubt it has to be. It just is. It's a big question for everybody that plays the offensive tackle position, but especially when you miss half of your rookie year. As far as Sadiq Charles, I don't know what he is. At times he looks the part and looks fine and looks okay, and I think he can get after it a little bit. Versatile, can play, again, right tackle, right guard, maybe left tackle. That's what position he played at LSU, but he's been slowish to develop, which maybe you should have expected. Maybe I should have expected. I want to see more. I want to see him step up in a big time way, because if Washington can save a roster spot by him adequately or above average playing 4 different positions, that's going to help. Now, it might also push one of David's guys, Chris Paul, off the initial roster. I think Chris Paul would be fine to get through the practice squad. And remember, Ron Rivera and John Matsko love their offensive linemen, hence the reason why I went with 10 last week when we did our offensive projections. Coming up, we break down the Commanders in terms of this. Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew were ranked where when it comes to NFL front office / GM posts? You might be surprised. We'll tell you that coming up shortly. But first, we tell you about our friends at betonline.net. Betonline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find out all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball and preseason football, guys, is straight ahead. Just think about it. The Hall of Fame game's like a week and a half away. You can start putting down change on NFL football. Yes, I know the preseason, but still, that's exciting. The Raiders and I think the Jaguars are playing in Canton. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net, they're our friends. We love them. Fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sporting events, even the ones that don't maybe get as much attention, like MMA, boxing, golf, what have you. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device and learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thanks again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and your first view of the day. Once again, I'm Chris Russell, David Harrison, out on this particular episode. Which NFL stars move the betting line the most? We were just telling you about our friends at betonline.net. It's already underway. Locked On Podcast Network gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers' perspective at BetOnline. Available right now on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts, and, of course, on YouTube, which is how you can consume the Locked On Commanders podcast. Absolutely, and we appreciate you for consuming one way or the other. So where did the combination of Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew rank in terms of a general manager front office setup? We had a recent poll analysis piece. You know, you see all of that at this time of the year. Everybody's bored. Everybody wants football to come back. We'll have some on-field stuff, of course, next week. Ron Rivera scheduled to talk right now on Tuesday afternoon of next week, guys. Tuesday afternoon of next week. And then, of course, practice starts the next morning. So, Patrick Daugherty of NBC Sports Edge recently ranked each team's general manager situation. Now, some teams have one traditional GM that has all the power, and then, of course, the head coach. Some teams have the head coach as the general manager, i.e. what kind of sort of happens here. Then you have kind of a tag team with the Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams, even though their roles are clearly defined. Les Snead is the GM, Sean McVay is the head coach. You know that Sean McVay has significant input and of course now will have even more, you would think, after winning a Super Bowl, right? Well, Washington's general manager situation, which Daugherty in this piece referred to as quote-unquote various, ranked number 26 in the NFL. And you might say, well, Chris, that's not worse, right? And you're right. It's not worse. The problem is Darty only ranked 27 situations or individuals because he didn't take into account, of course, all the new GMs around the league. Your Ryan Poles in Chicago, your Joe Shanes in New York, so on and so forth, right? So there's only 27 ranked. Number 27 on the list, go figure, predictably, Trent Baalke of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who a lot of people have a major issue with. So that's the only GM situation that ranked below Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew. Here's what Doherty basically had to say. What exactly is the plan here? He said. One thing is clear. There's no shortage of cooks in the kitchen. Martin Mayhew is the general manager. Marty Herney is the executive VP of player personnel. Both report directly to Coach Ron Rivera, who has the final say over the team's football and personnel department. Somewhere in there is senior advisor Doug Williams and cap manager Rob Rogers. Together, their big offseason gambit was trading a pair of third-round picks. That's not exactly true because one of those picks, i.e. this year, could turn into a second-round pick, conditional. So it's not really 2 third-round picks. It could be, but it's not absolutely for a quarterback who just flopped with his self-professed mentor, Frank Reich, in Indianapolis, coming off of a 2021 draft class that was not productive in its first year in the NFL. And again, certainly you can make that argument. The Commanders made a polarizing first-round selection in Jahan Dotson. After signing Curtis Samuel last spring and extending Terry McLaurin this summer, they have a huge amount of resources invested in a position Wentz was weirdly indifferent about targeting in both Indianapolis and Philadelphia. Everything will look better if Chase Young and Montez Sweat come back healthy after 2021 injuries, but Wentz was about the least inspiring wagon imaginable for this front office to hitch its fortunes to. Yikes. Well, guys, listen, we've talked about all of this. I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on this. You know how we feel. I mean, I still have major questions about Carson Wentz. I think anybody that doesn't is fooling themselves and is just filling out talking points. And you're going to hear nothing but positivity and praise from Ron Rivera and a lot of the teammates. And maybe some of that is true. Maybe a lot of that is true. But those are talking points. We have to wait until October or November when things go sour and you've lost 3 in a row and he's thrown 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions over 3 games, that type of thing, to see how good Carson Wentz is. Can he dig out of that? Can he rally the cause? Do teammates start to divide? All of that stuff. As far as Jahan Dotson, listen, maybe they've overinvested in the wide receiver. Look, I don't think Carson Wentz had a lot of weapons in Philadelphia and or in Indianapolis at the wide receiver position. That's one reason why they really haven't targeted that particular position. I mean, Jonathan Taylor was the main meal piece in Indianapolis. In Philadelphia, you say probably Zach Ertz, and at times different wide receivers along the way, and he kind of made and mixed and matched and all that. So this is clearly a different team, but it's also, if Logan Thomas can return to health at some point and full health and hopeful full productivity, this is a team that's got a good on paper receiver group. Also, maybe very good, depending on the quarterback, depending on health, depending on all of that. Also, a pretty fairly good running game and backs out of the backfield in terms of pass catching, right? I think all 3 guys can do that. Gibson, Brian Robinson Jr., the rookie out of Alabama, and of course, J.D. McKissick and maybe more. And then on top of that, again, the tight end position. Now, it'll really be accentuated if Logan Thomas can return to pre-injury form Logan Thomas. It will be certainly a major question until then and until we see that. And I think it is a major question going in to camp for those of us that follow this team on an individual basis. So I think this ranking is a little harsh on Rivera and Mayhew. I wouldn't put them much higher. But to me, like, is Houston's situation with Nick Caserio any better? I don't know. Is Atlanta's situation with Terry Fontenot any better? I don't think so. I could be wrong. But there's a couple of situations out there that are known or at least somewhat established for at least a year where I could make a strong argument the Commanders are in much better position than those two particular organizations and teams and rosters that I just mentioned. Again, I wouldn't put Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew like in the middle of the pack or in the top 10 or anything like that. I'm not being silly, but I wouldn't put them all the way near the bottom in Trent Baalke territory. That's just me. I could be wrong. That's my opinion. All right. When we return on the Locked On Commanders podcast, we'll close it out. On this solo edition, where did the Washington vaunted edge pass rushers rank on ESPN's ranking and analysis project? Or did they? We'll answer that question and tell you why or why not next, right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast. All right, guys, once again, I'm Chris Russell. David Harrison will return on the next episode. He'll be flying solo as we're back to our normal regular season schedule. So where did Washington's vaunted edge pass rushers of Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and I guess more rank on ESPN's top 10 list? We've cycled through the offense, as you know. Only Terry McLaurin got honorable mention. No other position group featured any list of any Commanders. Well, on the pass rush ranking, or edge pass rusher, I should say, which includes 4-3 defensive ends, 3-4 outside linebackers, but not interior defensive tackles, Chase Young did make the list. Yay! He didn't make the top 10. He got honorable mention, which I guess is better than being shut out or in the also receiving votes category. Let me read you what ESPN's personnel executives and Jeremy Fowler kind of tallied up about Chase Young. Said, quote, Young won the Defensive Rookie of the Year award in 2020, but struggled in year 2 with 1.5 sacks in 9 games. And now he's recovering from a torn ACL that could affect his early season outlook for 2022. Quote, he'll be fine long-term, an NFL, end quote, an NFC front office official said. Quote, he's best when he plays with power. He's a power-first guy, end quote. I think that's true. I think Chase Young lacks a repertoire of moves, a variety of moves. I think he's got a lot of refinement in his game. I think he's got to play with more structure and sound. I think he dominated a bunch of injury-prone, bad offensive tackles in the second half of 2022. And when asked to really play well, in one game he did it against Trent Williams, and I'll give him the credit. One game against Donovan Smith in Tampa Bay, he was completely shut down. So we have to see more, even before last year's Chase Young, which was already disappointing on the field for a variety of reasons. And now, again, you factor in, again, the recovery from the ACL. Also receiving in the group of honorable mention was Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals, Danielle Hunter of the Vikings, DeMarcus Lawrence of the Cowboys, Shaq Barrett of Tampa. I think all of those guys are better than Chase Young. That's me. I could be wrong. Maybe that's recency biased. I don't know. He did rank clearly ahead of, and that group did rank ahead of Josh Allen of the Jaguars, Robert Quinn of the Bears, Rashawn Gary of the Green Bay Packers, who are in the also receiving votes category on ESPN's top 10 list. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. We want to thank you again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and your first view of the day. Come on back for the next episode. David Harrison will be flying solo, and then we'll be back together again before the week is out. Now make your second listen and view the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason, what is that? Doesn't equal a break in the action. Follow Locked On NFL every day on the Audacy app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You want to hop in? It's 301-615-3577. That's 301-615-3577 on the voicemail line, or LockedOnWashingtonCommanders@gmail.com. Again, that's going to do it for us today, Commanders fans. Thanks again for joining me and us. We're free and available on all platforms. Again, David back on the next episode. We'll return together before the week is out. For David Harrison, who's covering the Washington Commanders on SI.com's Fan Nation, I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980 with Pete Medhurst. We'll be back right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.